All right, guys, welcome. I am so excited to be talking with Billy from BGF Photography and Video and Kim from Kim Spencer Content. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Great.
I'm great. I'm Heather from Upstate Indie Weddings, if y'all don't know.
In case
y'all
you don't
know.
Of
y'all
course.
know.
Everyone knows.
Everyone knows.
She's the queen of weddings.
That's taking it a bit far, Billy, but thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate that introduction always. So today we're going to talk a little bit about wedding photography. I'm so excited. I hear so many couples when they come to our wedding shows, like photographers are the thing that they want to figure out how to find, because it is a significant investment and it is a thing that, of all the categories, photography is the thing that like lasts for decades and decades and decades past your wedding day, and it's what you show your children and your grandchildren, and you get to remember, and you review it on your anniversary, and like it's, you know, the cake and the dress and all those things kind of, you know, they're for the one day, but the photography is really, really important. So I'm so excited that we're talking about this today. Before we dive into all the like goodies and little nuggets, right? Let's just say a little quick origin story, how you guys got into photography, what your background is, just so people kind of get familiar with kind of where you came from. Kim, you want to go first?
So I have a very complicated, I guess, history of just working for myself. So I've always been in like the creative area. I've loved to, I shouldn't say be in front of the camera, but I've always been in front of the camera myself. And, but I love creating content, always have. I do social media, that was first. And then I just happened to, it was such a funny story how I did my first wedding. So I won't get into it, but I just met somebody over COVID online who happened to get married in Buffalo, happened to know me. And that was my first official wedding as myself as Kim Spencer Content.
That's awesome.
So that worked really cool, and since then I've been doing both social media and weddings and helping Billy out this year. So
I wouldn't
be able to function, I think, without. At least my social media would be non-existent, let's face it.
It's great. I love everything that you make him do on social.
Seriously,
honestly,
right?
I get a little chuckle every time
like,
I scroll through.
Every time I'm just like, I'm in danger.
You are.
What are we gonna do next?
And now what?
What are we gonna do later after this, right? Oh boy.
Exactly. How about you, Billy?
So, photography. You know, it's a little cliche, but like I started as a kid just like playing around with my grandparents' cameras and not being allowed to play with the nice ones, but still playing with them anyway and getting yelled at. Right? And you know, I get yelled at when I break things, but it's fine. Right?
It's okay.
And so I've always really loved it, and you know, went to college, became an engineer, did the big boy job for a while, and we popped out our baby, right, 3 years ago, and I've always wanted to really kind of switch to this as a career. And it was the perfect kind of midlife crisis moment to have that career change because it is a lot more flexible with my time schedule being a stay-at-home dad.
Of course.
So now I am a full-time wedding photographer. I actually started out in 2019, very, very part-time, second shooting. I did a couple of my weddings of my own before COVID, and then after COVID as well. Then apparently people liked my work enough to fill up my first year. So I was like, oh, okay.
That's awesome.
All right, that happened.
It's not because you know what you're doing or anything.
No.
It's just because they like you.
Just because they obviously, the personality,
obviously.
right?
It's not talent. No.
No.
Silly.
definitely both.
Silly.
We'll get into that because I have opinions about that too. So we'll get into it. Yeah.
Okay. Little Easter egg.
Yeah.
Easter egg. Yeah.
I love that.
Preview.
I love that.
Speaking of which, before we really deep dive, I wanna explain the space that we're in because I think it is really cool. It is gorgeous. It is really cool that we even have something this awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
And how amazing they are to let us do this here. But this is the Cafe Bewilderment. It is probably the coolest cafe slash brunch spot slash barber shop slash little bookstore.
Like
retail space in town. So if you need a place to hang out, if you need a place to just be awesome, this is where you should take you and your
Your
friends.
awesome level grows.
Your awesome level
here.
increases as you hang out in such a
feel
wonderful space.
sophisticated.
Yeah.
Right? Like you can't see, but there's a nice fireplace here that's just so
It's a vibe.
It's
feels
so
really
cozy,
nice,
right?
And these drinks are really good.
And they make latte art.
Yes.
They make the leaves perfect.
Yeah.
Perfectly. And
I mean,
the
one of these
flavors
days
are
I'll find
unique.
out if they really want to get a little creative, maybe like draw like a little design or something. But like the leaves have been perfection.
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Yeah. It reminds
saying.
me of like, you know, the cute cafes in like Brooklyn and New York. You know, it definitely
Exactly.
has like a vibe
This
to it.
feels like
So-
somebody took that and
somebody
like
took
put
that
it
and put it
here.
here,
Yeah.
but it's like also like 3 times the size because
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is huge,
Yeah.
right?
You could fit 4 tables in Brooklyn. You got like quite a few more
You're
over
waiting
here.
outside
Yeah, and
for
a
your
cute bar.
drinks, exactly, right?
Awesome. Okay, so we love the space. It's very vibey. It's the perfect environment to talk about photography
Oh, okay.
because it's so aesthetic in here, and like that's
Yeah.
that's kind
Yeah,
of what you
exactly.
need, right?
Yeah.
You need the vibes. So let's jump into it. So let's talk a little bit about photography styles, right? Because I think that couples will go on Instagram or they'll go on Pinterest and they'll kind of see all this stuff, and they'll end up with like 300 pictures that they like, but they don't really know what kind of style they're actually looking for in order to communicate it back and find a photographer who fits. So can we talk a little bit about like the styles of photography?
We can absolutely. So I feel like there's 2 kind of main camps where you have one where it's a little more traditional, a little more editorial, a little more stylized. Think like, you know, very vogued out. Think celebrity weddings, really anywhere that you want to feature the space and all the details that you put into that space. So that includes, you know, your wedding dress, you know, the decor,
flat lay, right?
I'm a big fan of doing the flat
Love
lays.
a flat lay.
Even though I'm actually the opposite camp.
For
but-
people who don't know what a flat lay is, can we just explain it really quickly?
Yeah, we'll get into a lot today.
Okay,
Don't
all
worry,
right,
right?
all
So with flat lay, basically the goal is we want to really kind of hone in on how much time and effort you spent as the couple making yourselves look good for the day.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately the goal. So
Yeah.
if that means you spent money on custom stationery, on your invitations and save the dates, your ring is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
You have a nice little bottle of Dior or Prada.
You have cute shoes.
Cute
Yeah.
shoes, right? Throw a little Manolo Blahnik in there, right? We want to show that off. And so the best way to do it is we basically find somewhere that's aesthetically pleasing, or in my case, when I don't have a place that's aesthetically pleasing, I bring like 15 different.
Do you have a kit? Do you have a little roller bag with flat
I have
lay
a bag.
stuff?
Yeah, I bring 15 different hand-painted flat lay mats to match your colors.
Of course.
Tracks.
Tracks, of course it does. And because I asked for your bridal colors, right?
Yeah.
And then and I asked for, you know, things that are most important to you.
Yeah.
So that could be anything from, you know, something from your first date that you had a little souvenir from, or most recently I had, you know, a couple that had custom magic cards made
Cute.
of the 2 of them. It was
Wow.
adorable, right?
Yeah,
Things
cute.
like that, like
Yeah.
something that's very important to the 2 of you. We put that on the flat lay. We put everything you're gonna be wearing: your jewelry, your shoes, you know, stationery, and flowers. You know, a lot of times I always ask like if you can get flowers involved.
Yeah.
If the florist can come a day before, you grab them from them, put it in the fridge. It just kind of adds to the spice.
To the magic.
To the magic. So
Yeah.
that's what a flat lay is.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we have this kind of editorial.
Tangent number 1, right?
That's
the
okay.
first tangent.
That's okay. We're gonna do it. So
Right,
you're gonna
exactly,
get
yeah.
all the good info out of
Exactly.
it. So we have editorial style.
Editorial,
and
more
then,
posed, more kind of, you know, structured in a way that you want to really show off
Yeah.
yourself in the space.
Okay.
And then you have the opposite side of things, which is more kind of my territory, where it's candid, kind of photojournalistic style, and the goal with it is I want to capture your wedding story, and I want to capture it as the way that it's happening.
Yeah.
So what that means is I'm paying attention to very particular moments that are happening, people that are interacting with each other, mom seeing you for the first time in your dress, grandma just like breaking down, seeing
Sure.
you in their dress, you
Yeah.
know, dad trying to hold his tears in, you know, all those little kind of moments. Or like the friend from out of town that you haven't seen in months that's seeing you for the first time in a while that's going, wow, like you look amazing, right?
Yeah.
Those little morsels of moments, I feel,
Yeah.
are very, very important. But with that said, there's always overlap.
Sure.
You know, not everyone is I'm only going to shoot candid, or I'm only going to be editorial, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of overlap throughout
For
the
sure.
wedding day. So
Yeah, I had this moment when I got married of it's me and my dad, and it's my favorite picture from the entire day. And we're about to walk down the aisle, right? And he just told me this ridiculous dad joke. And the look on his face is he's quite smug and proud of himself for just like landing this dad joke at the best time.
Perfect, right?
And I'm just looking at him like, are you freaking kidding me right now? Did you just say, I'm about to walk down the aisle and you just did this dad joke in the middle of it? And just our facial expressions is like the synopsis of like our relationship. And I will forever be grateful to that photographer for capturing like that ridiculous moment instead of, and pay attention to the dynamics and how everybody's kind of interacting together versus just like, okay, and then the doors open and everyone smiles and then we walk down, you know? So
I think that what's very important too with that style of, you know, what you love about that photo is you might not necessarily frame it.
Yeah.
You might not necessarily hang it on your wall.
Yeah.
But you will always look at it when you think of your dad.
Of course, absolutely. So there's photography styles, and then I think people also get a little bit kind of overwhelmed because there's editing styles too, right? So people see, you know, at the end of the day, what does that photo really look like when it's printed out? Can we talk a little bit about the editing styles?
So editing styles, a lot of it derives from film, actually. So a lot of the various color choices where you have, they all kind of have a pedigree that comes from film.
Yeah.
Because the film stocks, even now today, they have very specific looks. So when you shoot in on film, you don't get to choose what the colors look like afterwards. You bought that particular film stock with that choice in mind, right? So with editing, being that everything is digital now, and you can really just kind of go crazy. You can go from one end of the extreme all the way to the other, right? So with the various editing styles, you know, the four main ones, you have kind of a light and airy, very bright colored, a little bit overexposed on the background to try and pinpoint, you know, your presence in the photo, which is more akin to kind of like an editorial style. You're featuring the space, you're featuring the brightness. It's very appropriate for summer weddings, a little bit less so for fall weddings, spring weddings as well. Then you kind of have like a dark and moody. So a dark and moody, there's actually a misconception. Dark and moody is actually not an editing style.
Okay.
It's actually a shooting style. It's a photography style. You're trying to find pockets of light and shadow to emphasize both the space and your subject, right? So to give you an example, some venues like, say, the Admiral Room or the building that we all love to take photos at for engagements, the Elegant, so you can book it for like Elegant Square building, very dark and moody.
Yeah.
You want those harsh shadows in those photos.
Yeah, that's a really good point though, is that like people don't necessarily take into consideration how all these things sort of need to work together, right? So, you know, on Weddings Unfiltered, we talked a little bit recently in a podcast episode is coming out about wedding vision, right? And about how before you do anything, before you book anyone, before you sign any contracts and put any deposits down, you need to sit down with your partner and think about what you want your vision to be.
Right.
And then every decision needs to be based around that vision because you don't want to get a photographer and a venue that kind of don't work very well together. And a lot of photographers are fantastic and they're moldable, but their style might not be akin to what that venue would really shine, you know, had you had a different kind of match.
And I think this actually plays into the other two kind of editing styles perfectly.
Yeah.
In that if you are looking to have your photos edited in a way where they really fit anywhere, you know, regardless of the lighting, the space, then you have this kind of true to life style, a little more, you know, again, photojournalistic, a little more candid. So my particular editing style is a little more true to life. I aim for skin tones, right? But then I also aim for not making things super stylistic.
Sure.
And then the fourth and final, which for the most part has kind of started to fade a little, it was very popular about 10 years ago. It's basically like a kind of monochromatic. The idea is you're making all the colors similar. To emphasize, so it's actually, it derives from kind of really traditional photography, but also black and white as well. you're emphasizing the subject in a way where they're not sticking out by color alone.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So one example that was very popular was very kind of like a sepia brown washed out look. And it was very appropriate because of the way that they were trying to simulate film and where that kind of editing style came from.
Yeah.
Very popular about 10 years ago, a little less popular nowadays, but those are kind of the four main kind of editing styles, and of course there is always overlap. You can always have a little bit of a dash of light and airy and a little bit of true to life, or a little bit of true to life and a little bit of
I have a question.
dark and moody. Yes.
Yes, Kim.
When you say that, like brown looking, sepia or sepia?
I say sepia, but I don't know if it's
I
actually.
used to say sepia.
Do you-
So
I've
it's
heard it
sepia.
both
I think
ways.
I've heard both
Okay.
ways.
I've
Yeah.
heard
yeah.
both ways.
Okay.
I think it's like tomato. Like
Right.
you can just pick your poison.
Right.
I think it's okay.
I think we're both right. It's
Okay.
fine. Yeah. So.
Okay, so if I am getting married, first thing to think about is what is your vision? What do you actually want your wedding to look and feel like, right? Number two is editing photography styles, right? Are you looking for more of the candid emotion kind of focus, or are you looking kind of for more of the detail and the venue and the dress and all that stuff that's kind of put into the day?
To be fair, right
Yeah.
there again, there is overlap between the two.
Absolutely,
But you will
absolutely.
find photographers that will be like, I will be more emphasizing the candid,
Sure.
and you'll find photographers that are more like, I would love to basically, turn your full day into a photo shoot, but produce absolutely gorgeous, magazine results.
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
So,
For sure. Then we have the editing styles, right? Of like exactly what it's going to kind of look like at the end of the day when you get ththose photos printed out. And our venue kind of needs to match, what it looks like, so that we kind of get what we want at the end of the day, right? Do we have this like beautiful grand venue, and we really want to emphasize that in more of an editorial way. I think the next thing that people don't necessarily think about as much, but is, I think, one of the most important things is personality, right? So,
we teased that earlier.
I mean, I think your planner, for sure, and your photographer, maybe even more so, are with you all day long.
All day long.
All day long, in like the crazy, frantic, chaotic moments, in the fun
And content
party
creator.
moments,
And content creator as well.
1,000%.
Anybody, really anybody in your media team, right?
Anyone on
And your
media.
planner
Yeah.
is just going to be there while you're not fully dressed yet.
Yeah.
And not looking exactly like you're going to be looking. But
Exactly.
those moments of vulnerability, you're spending with us.
1,000%. So let's talk a little bit about personality and what people should kind of look for in personality and how it could kind of really impact a choice.
My mom says my personality is excellent.
Your personality is excellent, Ellie. It's your mom's right.
Yeah, she's onto something. She's onto
Yeah.
something.
Well, do you want to get started? I think because you're a prime example of personality and how you make people feel comfortable just being around you.
Yeah, I think in general, just to like frame this, most people getting married are not used to having people following them around 12 inches from their face.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So,
Yeah,
I
and
try and make it like at least like 2 feet.
thank you.
then you zoom.
And then I
And then you have
right,
gadgets. Yeah.
like hiding in a bush somewhere.
I actually kind of wanted, I don't know if this is important, but I was thinking if somebody is going for that editorial look, don't you feel like they have to have that type of personality as well? Because you can't do all the heavy lifting of like that type of style, or no?
Well, so I think that this is where I think everyone has a slightly different opinion, but I think in my personal opinion, if you're doing wedding photography, I think that you don't necessarily need to be a master of every style of photography out there, every kind of photography, but you need to be comfortable doing every kind of photography. Because quite literally on a wedding day, you are doing everything from detail photos, you're doing everything from high speed, fast motion, which comes from sports and wildlife. You're doing architectural photos, you're doing portraiture, you're doing editorial work, you're doing candid. So all of that really has to be in your toolkit, at least mentally, even if you don't necessarily emphasize all of it.
Sure.
I think you need to be comfortable, right?
Yeah.
So that's where there's some overlap in
Yeah.
that there's always going to be candid moments and editorial moments. But will your personality be, I am purely a fashion photographer and I'm going to make your day weird and awkward?
Yeah.
Or you know, do you just be there for the couple because you genuinely love their love?
Yeah.
Right?
I feel like you answered my question half. So I'm talking about like the couple's personality.
Oh, the couple's personality. Okay.
That's a
yeah.
good.
Do you know
that's
what
a-
I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
It depends, right?
I think it depends.
What are
I
they
mean,
into?
What are they into, and like what's their comfort level?
Right.
Like, I had branding photos done, right, and that is not my comfort zone. I don't like to be. I don't know, it's just not a thing that I'm very comfortable with. But the photographer that I was working with, that was her thing. The branding photos were her thing. And so she was kind of posing me in all these ways that to me felt very awkward in the moment. But then at the end of the day when I looked, I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, that's what it looked
that
like,
looks
right?
wonderful.
Right,
Snapped,
yeah.
Versus I worked with someone who did family photos for me and my family. And when I'm just like goofing around with them, I don't care. You know, it's like less intimidating to me. But my partner hates having a camera in his face. Period. End of story. Like, does not like it. And so I wanted to find someone who had that kind of personality that would make even him and the kids feel very comfortable. You know, so I think it's just about like, what is your end goal? And then who is the person that kind of makes you feel like you don't even need to worry about them being there to a degree, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's where your personality and what you want out of your wedding day really is an important conversation.
Yeah.
Right? It will very much determine, do we want an editorial style photographer? Do we want content creator to have that kind of behind the scenes and those kind of raw moments?
Yeah.
Do we want a candid photographer? But at the same time, right, your candid photographer should be able to take some more vogued out photos for you.
Sure.
Right? It's part of the job.
I feel like it's kind of like, this is how I approach working now, because as I said, I've kind of been in social media and in that type of content for a long time, and I wasn't always like this, but I kind of feel like it's like dating, because when I met my husband, I was like, I'm just gonna be that person. Like, if I want to double text, I'm gonna double text because that's who I am.
Right, yeah.
So when I approach like a new couple, I'm like, okay, I am a lot. Like, I'm gonna make weird jokes, and I'm gonna. But if you're not into that, then maybe that's not a good fit. So it takes a long time to get that comfortability to be yourself, especially as a professional. But I find that it's just, you'll find the right people, and that's how. So it really is important, because also I've worked with couples that aren't giving me anything. You know, so then you kind of have to work through it, like you said. Then you kind of bring in those other types of photography and other types of content and stuff to like match. So I really think it's like both personalities.
I completely misunderstood her question.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. But like, I think you kind of also open that door too, that you know, you do have to supplement a little
As
bit.
a
If
professional,
somebody's
you need
like,
to be
oh, on my
comfortable with
day I
everything,
want to
right?
like
Yeah.
stand and I want to have my dress and I want to have a stoic look, but that's not really their personality.
Yeah.
They think they want that photo, but then it comes to it and it's like, okay, you're not giving me.
You're not,
you know, you're not giving.
right.
Yeah,
And,
you know?
and this is a conversation not only to have with your significant other before you get married. I think this is a conversation you need to have with your professionals, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times wedding photographers, content creation, really any of your vendors will have a consultation with you in some capacity.
Yeah.
You know, I prefer to do it over video chat now because honestly everyone just does Zoom calls, but realistically, I mean, back in the day you would literally meet for coffee to have that conversation. Because it is important that you genuinely like your professionals. You like that they're there with you the entire day. And if you don't get along, you got to find someone that you get along with. Right?
And I think that brings up a really good point about ghosting. Like ghosting, and also being clear about exactly what you want, what environment you want on your wedding day, right? And I think number one, it's important as a couple to, again, I'm going to go back to the wedding vision, but like, who do you want? Not only do you want it to look and feel like, what kind of people do you want surrounding you? Do you want people who are maybe more quiet, who fade in the background? Do you want someone who's very bubbly and like is going to be like joking around with you like a bestie? Like, what kind of vibe do you want? And then don't be afraid to really look and date, it's a great analogy, until you find that person that fits, right? And if that person doesn't fit because your personalities don't fit, then just like tell them, like, hey, I think your work is beautiful, but I just don't think that like it's a good fit personality-wise for the day. Y'all are professionals. Like, it's okay.
Yeah, it's not something that we're not expecting.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that, like, just being very upfront with what you're looking for and very honest and transparent is also, like, really important. And don't feel like you have to go with the first person that you kind of meet with. Like, it should be like dating.
Yeah.
Like,
It should
how
be.
long,
Therapy, like finding the right
therapy.
therapist.
Finding the right therapist.
Like, how long
You
did it
know.
take
It's
to find
important.
this partner that you now want to
Right.
spend the rest of your life
Right.
with? Like, spend a little time.
Yeah,
The
because you're
person's going to
spending
document your
12
first date together.
hours with
money
the
and-
person, right?
Exactly.
You know, like really, yeah.
Exactly. So I think those are all really, really good points. I think one other really good point before we move on to the next topic is make sure you look at entire galleries, not just the highlight reel on Instagram, because you want to see what that person's really going to do the entire day and not just like the best of the best, because Instagram in life is just the best of the best, right? And so you want to be able to like really know what you're getting and what you're paying for.
Right.
And most photographers will, if they don't already have full galleries on their website, if you ask them for a gallery, they will usually be able to send you at least a couple of them, sometimes even specifically for your venue. In my case, I just post my most recent weddings right on my website and kind of just cycle through them. But the goal is, again, being the sort of photojournalistic style that I am, I don't want you to just see one photo from a wedding. You know, even though it's my favorite photo, it might be my favorite photo, but without the context of what happened before and after that moment, it might not make sense to you. So in fact, instead of looking at that one photo and being like, okay, this is cool, but like I don't really get what's happening, look at the entire gallery, then you'll all of a sudden understand why she's having that reaction or why he's doing what he's doing. You know, so
It's important.
it's important.
It's really important. I think you brought up two really good points. One is if a photographer, there are so many photographers in Buffalo. I think it's like one of the most saturated vendor categories.
Everywhere
He knows
too,
all the stats.
Right? There's a lot of stats. But if a photographer is not giving you full galleries, red flag.
Yeah.
It's a little
Right?
weird. A little weird.
It's a red flag. Potential red flag, something to
Like, why
investigate
wouldn't
further.
you?
Right.
Yeah, it's just something to investigate further. And I think one other point that you brought up is showing photos, if available, in the couple's venue. So if you shot in that venue before, right? So there are a couple of venues around town, and we just did a styled shoot there not too long ago, where the lighting can be a little bit tricky, right? And so if you are a photographer who has not been to that venue before and hasn't shot in that venue before and is familiar with the conditions and the lighting and whatnot, you're going to be coming at it kind of new.
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
Which I have a little, I guess a better way to break that down for you.
Yes, please.
So I think that, again, going back to if you're doing wedding photography, you should be comfortable being thrown in whatever situation.
100%.
Right? So you should bring with you everything you need to be able to shoot in whatever conditions. So I think it's very important that if you look at, even if the photographer has, great photos in one venue, but it's a completely opposite style or a completely opposite lighting environment, you can ask for photos or galleries from a venue that's very close to what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And if they do a great job there, you can tell that they have that kind of flexibility in their
experience,
skill,
right?
And
they
the
know what
experience,
they're doing.
right? A lot of times, if you're a destination photographer, you're never going to actually know everything about the venue that you're flying to for the first time, right? So a lot of times, what a photographer will do is we'll do a little we'll scope out the space the day before or the week before. We'll meet with the coordinator. So that's why we usually ask for your event coordinator, your wedding coordinator, or space, so we can call them ahead of time, and be like, hey, I really want to just walk through this with you real quick, if we feel like that's necessary.
Yeah.
But if we don't,
Green flag.
I was just gonna say, yeah.
I wish I had little.
I know.
I have
flag.
little,
Oh, the little-
like,
yeah,
I'll put it
the
on my
little-
paddles, right? Yeah.
Or just raise your hand, like, that works.
and most venues, I will say this too, like there are venues where like the ones I've shot at for the first time, I'll just be like, you know what, I'm gonna just Google other wedding photos that have been taken there. Be like, oh yeah, this is totally with my wheelhouse. Or like, okay, this one might be a little challenging. Let me reach out to the venue. Let me do a walkthrough with you real quick.
Yeah.
And, I want to really kind of learn the quirks of your space.
You do that before or after booking?
I do that usually after booking.
So you would book and then
I would
kind
book
of-
it. Yep.
It's up to you to.
Yep, exactly. But I'll explain to my couple. It's like, hey, if this is a venue where I'm like, I don't really see a lot of photos. I've never been there. Let's say it's Finger Lakes or whatever it is. I've never been there. let me reach out to the venue and I'll see
Yeah.
what they can help me with, right? A lot of times they'll send me photos, or a lot of times like they'll be like, oh yeah, we know there's one particular area that always trips up photographers.
Yeah.
You know, they'll tell me all these little tricks of the
They
trade,
know.
right? So
yeah, that's really important.
exactly.
All right, let's switch gears a little bit to trends, right? Photography
Ooh,
trends.
okay.
So, what are you guys seeing out there?
What are you seeing out there? And
For
you're the cutting edge.
I know you are the cutting
I-
edge.
right?
I would say I'm a trend.
Yeah.
Like,
You are a
Yeah.
trend.
content
Right.
is a trend. In just maybe prioritizing the video in general, I think it's always been moving that way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
at
we'll
least-
get into that
Yeah,
shortly. A
yeah.
very deep dive on all that.
And definitely, video and the candid thing, I feel like that's like a buzzword almost. Like, I don't know if it's always been like that, but
No,
I feel like
historically it's always the opposite.
Yeah, everybody says like candid, and I almost brought that up earlier. Like, candid, I feel like is kind of too big of a term almost. So, like when I talk with Brett, or sorry, I'm touching this. Is that gonna be like?
Oh, you're fine. pet, it's fine.
So when I talk to like a couple, I'm like, okay, they say we just want candid moments from the day. That's not like, okay, let's all hug and then I make you laugh.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Sometimes
like,
it is for me.
Well,
Sometimes,
yeah. No,
sometimes
no.
they like don't know what to do. I'll be like,
Exactly.
give each other a hug and look really proud
but
of
it's
each other or
more
something,
like
right?
because I think that I'm kind of the same style as you, and that we're looking for that all day,
Yeah.
like looking for those things.
A little like spidey sense.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Laser focused on people's,
Yeah, I would
emotions.
say candids, and I honestly feel like only like half of my couples care about the social media aspect of content.
Yeah.
So there are trends there, like doing fun things and transitions and stuff, but a lot of people just want, which is a trend in itself, like to fill their camera roll with like all their wedding and
All the moments.
every moment that
Yeah.
they missed and want to remember and have immediately. So I guess content in general.
Content is a very vibey trend right now, right?
I feel like back in my day, I got married to my son says, back in my day, we did the like disposable cameras on
Yes.
the table, right?
That's still a
And
thing.
The
That's still a
intent of that was to get all of the random moments that are like
Yeah.
funny and candid and like what people's other perspective was, right? And I kind of feel like the evolution of that in a kind of a way is becoming like content creation,
Yeah.
because it's all those moments. It's like, Uncle Bill's at the bar again.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
cheersing
yeah.
you, or those kind of like little silly things that represent the things that like happened that maybe no one else saw, during the day. And it's just kind of like the next wave.
mean,
but I love it.
I could talk about it forever, but it's this, like what you said, the evolution of it. I feel like we've always just craved that, like in so many ways in life. Like we just want that personalized touch and to remember those little moments, because like these moments are so fleeting just in general, not to be cliche, but like
It's absolutely accurate.
so the disposable cameras, the camcorders, like you'd save things like notes that you'd
Photo
write back
booths,
in.
right?
Yeah,
like the printout photo booths.
we've always had that underlying craving of just keeping a moment and everything. And so with content, you don't know what you don't know yet. You don't know what's going to happen that day. You don't know, and you take pictures of your drinks. Why would you not take pictures of your day, like
Right.
videos of
Yeah.
your day and stuff? Like
I'm not allowed to eat food when we go out until my wife takes a photo of it.
phone eats first.
Right,
Hello.
exactly. Yeah, if
Yeah.
didn't make
Always.
a picture, it
First.
didn't happen, obviously.
I'm
right?
very upset with myself. We didn't take pictures of our
I
like
was
vibey
thinking
coffee.
that.
Oh, I did. Mine,
you
but
did?
yeah,
Okay.
I already got. But yours looked amazing. The little leaf
Just-
thing that they
it's
got
just-
going on.
I got the cardamom, and it's my
I mean, we'll
favorite.
go
and I
for
was
a
really
round two, I'm
thirsty.
sure.
It'll
We'll
be
go for a
great.
round
It'll be
two,
great.
but-
It'll be great. Yeah, I love that stuff. I
And
love
a lot of times the
those moments.
photographer might not be
Yeah.
everywhere all at once,
Oh,
right?
yeah, they just can't be.
They literally physically cannot be. But then you don't have to worry so much for I'll give you an example that's is a perfect example of content creation. Let's say I'm doing family portraits,
Mm-hmm.
right? Well, family portraits are, unfortunately, you can have some fun, but it's a little rigid.
They're
you know,
family portraits.
They're a little rigid.
I have a perfect
It's
example
hurting
of that.
cats.
Exactly. But
So-
then this is where you come in because there's always fun moments that happen behind the camera.
Yeah.
Or the moment around the
Yeah.
photo.
Mm-hmm.
So I just have this recollection because I was so happy that I got it. It was actually Hannah. Shout out Hannah.
Mm-hmm.
Or Canon
photography.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So she was doing the family photos, and the groom, I think he lost his mom, and so her sister came up to take a picture, but first or after she like grabbed him and whispered in his ear and kissed him on the cheek, and like the videographers might have gotten that, but you're not going to see that like right away.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just, that was such a candid moment, like truly emotional moment. Like I could almost cry thinking about that because like his mom wasn't there, and that was just so genuine. So I'm there rolling the whole time, and there is a difference between the videography of it all and everything. And I feel like videography also, it might be a little misunderstood in terms of what you get with that. So I don't know if you're going to talk about that.
We will. But the problem with videography is you're trying to create a narrative. So sometimes small moments might be missed.
Exactly.
Or they might not make it
They
in.
don't fit.
They don't necessarily make it in. You know, half the things you shoot don't get put in the final product.
And
right?
I mean, not to get too off track, but a lot of the time you have to pay for those raw clips as
that
well.
too. Sure, you have to pay
from a
extra for those,
videographer,
right?
and they're horizontal. So
And they're horizontal.
And they don't work for the IG.
hello, yeah,
For
exactly.
the
And you have to wait for
TikToks.
them.
Yes,
You know?
exactly.
And so I do love the trend of content creation in general, and more of that like instant gratification, for lack of a better
literally
word.
it is.
You know, because you can turn things around in the matter of like a week or so.
24 hours.
If not shorter. I didn't want to
Airdrop
sign
the
you up
day
for
off, right?
anything.
Thank you,
I
You're
appreciate
welcome. I didn't
that.
want to.
It depends, you know.
But like, you know, I just imagine just getting married, you have this whole day, everything goes so fast, and you're trying to like remember it, and like you're in wherever you are the next day, and you're going through your camera roll and going through the Instagram photos of people, and then you get all your stuff in from your content creator, and you get to like relive that day.
Yeah.
Just seeing everything else that happened around you, you know, is kind of a really special way to spend your
And
first day as a married couple.
What's actually really nice too with content creation is that you see those raw moments 1st before you see the edited,
Sure.
complete final photography and video. It's actually a perfect. It's a but it's a perfect sequence.
Yeah.
You don't want to see the edited photos and then see the phone footage afterwards. It doesn't really make sense.
That makes
Correct.
sense,
Right? It actually makes sense to see the raw, unfiltered moments of your day.
Yeah.
Then wait a few more weeks, and now you have the things you can actually get to print out and frame and put in an album, right?
So it just extends that whole like
Exactly.
wedding excitement. You know what I mean? It's not like day over.
That's why
okay, we're
content
done.
creation has kind of blown up everywhere,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's just extending that moment. I love it.
little history on content creation too is Emily Klein is actually she was a marketing manager, I'm pretty sure, in New York. She actually invented the category in 2022.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in 2022.
In 2022.
In 2022.
We knew here.
So she has the original website, www.weddingcontentcreator.com.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
She
wild.
literally invented the category.
that reminds me as well as like there's trends within everything, obviously. So there's styles and everything. So when it comes to content creation, there's also styles of that. And I like to say, I was actually just talking to somebody at that party, and she's like, you're more of like the party girl for content.
Yeah.
And I like to present myself as more like the exciting parts, but like,
Shameless plug, she's referring to the Willow and Oak Vendors Can Party
Yes.
2, I think, or 3?
Three. I think
Three?
it's
Oh,
three,
3,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that was
And this
fun.
was at
It's a good party
the
for vendors,
Lighthouse. It was
yeah.
a beautiful studio,
Gorgeous.
beautiful space.
gotta plug.
Continue, I'm sorry.
So no, it's okay. And then, so I like to say that as well. I will get the aesthetic things, like you said. You have to be wearing more than one hat. Like I will get the pretty candles and stuff, but I am mostly focused, and you'll see that on my Instagram, mostly focused on those fun moments as like your stand-in best friend, because you're going to ask your best, if you don't have a content creator, you're asking your best friend to get it.
Of course.
So they're behind the camera.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that that's important as well with anything, like even your planner. Everybody has a certain style and what they naturally will do.
Yeah.
So
and again, I don't want to plug the wedding vision date that everyone needs to have before they start this process.
It's
but like,
important.
What do you want? What are you looking for?
What are you looking for?
only looking for kind of aesthetic editorial vibes, or are you looking for more of that emotion, that fun?
We
that
talked
what
about
vibes?
this in part 1, right?
Yeah.
You know, have that open dialogue of what means most to you.
Yeah.
And then you plan out your wedding day based on what's most important.
It's
right?
not a zero-sum game. You'll get
It's
a little
not.
bit of everything, but like,
Exactly.
what's your priority?
And,
Right.
you know, I know that mom will tell you that like she wants this, this, and this.
yeah.
But ultimately, it's your wedding.
It's your wedding.
You
do what you want.
decide what's most important to you, right?
So mom's really important. However, another thing that's really important is celebrities. Can you talk a little bit about like how celebrity wedding culture? I mean, T-Swizzle's getting married.
That's going to change.
Selena just got married.
The wedding industry.
Like Zendaya
got married privately, so we don't actually know what it looks like.
I know. There's all these AI generated photos that are like guessing, which
everyone's
is every
like,
time
none
I
of this is
see
real.
it,
And I fall for it.
right? But how does like the celebrity trend kind of influence you guys as photographers, or does it?
So in my case, I think that it makes me more conscious of editorial styles because a lot of celebrity weddings do tend to be a little more editorial. Again, they're getting married in Italy, in Lake Como, in France. Very iconic venues, beautiful spaces.
Sure.
You're featuring, as much as you are your $30,000 dress, you're also featuring your
Can you
grand
imagine
venue.
a $30,000 dress?
Well, I mean,
My God,
right?
I could
It's
deposit
like
on a house.
it's designed for you,
I know.
by
Crazy.
Vera Wang or
Like a
whoever,
salary,
right? Yeah.
And do people come to you with like, this was Taylor Swift's wedding, I love this picture, like?
No, please don't.
Yeah, I know
right?
you
Please
don't like that.
She knows. I not that I'll be like no, right? But also like, please don't give me your Pinterest board.
Yeah.
Like well, this is again because of my personality and the way that I like to work, but I don't want to have a mental checklist that I have to go through in the back of my mind. I'd rather be fully present and pay attention to what you're doing and your energy, rather than, okay, we've got photo number 5 out of 30 that we're doing at this particular moment. So have that inspiration board, have it for your own purposes, and then if you love certain poses, and this probably plays right into your wheelhouses for content creation, if you love a specific photo, practice that pose.
Yeah.
Practice it in front of the mirror. The amount of my couples that are like, I've never done a dip before.
Yeah.
Well, let's not do a dip during a
the first
recessional
time,
for the first time, right?
Ever. Yeah,
Let's
for
not. Let's
sure.
just keep it simple so you don't trip over each other.
Yeah.
But have that Pinterest board, but just be comfortable with it.
Yeah.
For yourself.
I think that
right?
those, like a lot of the celebrities, like, I feel like it just got so quiet.
We're here on a quiet day on purpose.
Yeah.
I feel like like I saw a huge thing. I actually was researching this for content. After Taylor Swift got engaged, her ring in Google, like it was like the
Went
top
bananas. That and that floral
exactly.
arch.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's like maybe they don't come to you with like this was their wedding gallery, but I feel like in their head maybe they're like
Everyone's influenced by it,
Yeah.
right? They have some kind of background of this is what it would be amazing to look like. Obviously,
Of course. I think there's a nice balance, right? I think that one thing couples probably should take away from is they have their wedding vision, right? And they know kind of generally kind of the style and what they want it to look like, etc. And then at some point you have to have open, frank conversations with your vendors as you're going through that kind of interview process, but then you choose them, right? And you have to remember that you choose them for a reason. So you choose them because they understand who you are, because they are a professional, because their style matches yours, and then you have to let them be creative and be the professionals that they are. I think that there's a couple different categories that this rolls into, like music and DJ is another big category.
Yeah.
People try to no, you will play this, and then you will play this, and then you will play this, and this, and this. But the vibe of the room might not be dictating that, right? And so you kind of have to be like, okay, I know that I like this DJ. I like what I've heard from this person. I know and trust they're going to read the room properly. And you have to do the same thing with photographers.
The exact same thing. Most DJs will ask you for your favorite songs
or what not to play.
Or what
right?
not to
they
play.
Don't wanna,
right?
They don't want to
But they don't want a very
play
specific playlist of this song followed by this song followed by this song. Right?
Exactly.
They will work in the ones you love, but they will never be like, give me an exact playlist that I will stick to.
Yeah.
Because that kind of goes against the whole point, right, of having a DJ.
Okay, so we talked about trends, we've talked about editorial styles, personality, but let's talk about the numbers, the actual money to be paid and what you get, right? So let's talk about packages. So photographers usually have a bunch of packages listed on their site. Can you talk a little bit about what traditional packages look like, what you can expect from a photographer, that kind of stuff?
In fact, actually, I think Kim would actually be a great person to start. I keep putting you on the spot and being like making you the
Kim, go.
because your packages are very traditional, very like structured. Because again, right, you can choose to have a whole bunch of different options. I think you start, and I'll explain my view on it, which is slightly different.
Yeah, I think that it's, for me and in general, it's kind of still a thing that's being recognized as worth it.
Yeah.
So when I started, I was at a lower price point, and I personally didn't know what to charge really. And then you know, it's just imposter syndrome. It's all of those things.
Of course.
So once you have your actual price you're putting out there, what you're paying for with me is the hours on site. I mean, the beforehand stuff, but then the hours on site, how many edits, any travel or whatever. So it's hard to put a price on that, I guess. But like you said, I mean, my first, to put the number out there, the first like most popular package now is $17.50.
Drum roll.
Which includes 8 hours, highlight reel, like different edits. And then I'm very open and flexible, so there is a minimum amount of hours on site. I feel like that is an important thing for me. Like edits, I love to do. Like I should charge more. Like I'm like, oh, I'm gonna make you another one. So it's hard. I shouldn't say that, but like it's hard. So I think photography and videography, it's so involved that you're not just gonna pop out a bunch of new stuff. Like, you know.
Right.
Yeah. So.
It's a bit more complicated with photography,
Sure.
Yeah.
but in a similar vein. Like, how many hours do you have the photographer staff on site? That is one important thing. Beyond that, though, we have a little bit more post-processing to do.
Sure.
So
Which I don't think a lot of people really appreciate nor realize.
right, technology has advanced where it's a little bit easier now than it used to be.
Yeah.
But quite literally, like 10 years ago, you were manually editing every single photo, color correcting, and that was actually part of the reason why a lot of people shot Canon cameras back then, because the colors straight out of the camera were very, very balanced to begin with. Skin tones were very balanced to begin with. So now you had a little bit less to work, to do essentially. But now with the advancement technology, it has gotten a little bit faster. In my case, though, I just shoot twice as many photos now. Because I'm a crazy person. But then you have that post-processing period, and then you also have the planning phase, building a timeline with your couple.
Yeah.
You have the sort of the tertiary parts of it that you don't really consider. So I'll give you an example, and I really should charge for this, and I don't. But when I do weddings in Rochester, I don't charge for travel because I consider Rochester kind of like within our bubble, even though it takes an hour to drive there and an hour to drive back, right? We have to back up all of our footage, all of our photos. The process of backing that up takes about an hour or two. Everything, 7 different cards that are being backed up. You have the sort of prep and planning process just before the wedding, as well as the consultation. So if you add everything together, when you book an 8-hour package, it's not exactly an 8 hours that your photographer is working for you, right? There's comfortably about 2 to 3 times more than the actual number of hours that's on the quote-unquote package.
And you don't even cap your hours on the day.
Right, so I'm a weirdo in that I'm a special snowflake in that
Unicorn?
Yes.
A snowflake has a different connotation.
I don't like to do hours because, and this is very specifically just my style and my personality type of thing. This does not mean, oh, thank you so much.
Service here is fantastic, guys.
Service here is fantastic. And they make London fogs. Dude, so
Not
good.
on the menu, it's a secret.
But you'll ask them nicely.
Okay, so if you order this, make sure that you tell them you heard about it through
from
this,
us, right?
through this video.
Yeah.
And then send us on stories, tag us.
Yes, right?
Tag us on stories so we can see it. All of us. Tag all of us on stories because we want to see your drinks.
Right? They make and they do the little leafy things and all that. It's so good.
This is my first time drinking this. It's delicious.
Isn't it good? It's so good.
And a great star review. I love it. Perfect.
Right? Exactly.
Perfect.
I love it.
So you're a weirdo.
I'm a weirdo in that playing off of the whole, like, I'm trying to capture your wedding story, right? I want to be there to document your whole day. So what I mean by that is I don't specifically have an hour limit. My longest weddings have been like 14, 15 hours.
My God.
Yeah, I'm a crazy.
Hungry and tired.
Yeah, I mean they'll feed me usually, which is kind of nice, right?
Yeah,
Usually they'll
nice.
feed me, but I will be there as early to usually as late as I need to be to capture your wedding day. Because I think that's important to me personally. But that doesn't necessarily mean that every photographer that does their own, style, that has their own limits, there's no right or wrong answer to this, right? I want to emphasize.
There are boundaries that some people just can't. I wouldn't say it's a red flag necessarily if they don't offer that.
Exactly. No, it's absolutely not a red flag. Because again, you're not necessarily paying for the exact same style, and you're not paying for the exact same goals. My goal is I want to be there about half an hour to at most an hour after hair and makeup gets started, because I want to do, establishing of the venue. I want to do photos of everything else. I want to do your bridal details while hair and makeup are getting started. But for a while, you really won't be photo ready, until hair and makeup are at least close to being done. But during that moment, you're having a great time with you and the girls.
Yeah.
And those are precious.
Yeah.
Even if you're not fully made up yet.
It's also a great time for content creation.
It's also a great time for content creation, exactly. And then towards the end of the night, a lot of times it's, most wedding photographers will spend about an hour or two into general dancing and call it a day, right? Because your photos kind of start looking the samey.
Sure.
You have a great example of how that worked out in your favor because you stayed later and you got to capture a moment that unfortunately the photographer was not there for because he was only paid for a certain number of hours, but that moment will live on thanks to the fact that you were there.
What's the moment? I need to know the moment. That was a great setup. I need to know the moment now.
We were at the Hayloft.
Okay.
Shout out. And I have the whole situation on camera. So it was dancing.
Yeah.
The grandpa was there. You might have seen the reel. This was a while ago actually. And he was sitting at the table.
Okay.
I got the mom going like this.
Yeah.
Him going, and then like probably 2 minutes later, he comes out like this. And dances with her, and and when I was going to leave, because we could have left, so like it was, so it was kind of one of those situations. If I'm going to be there, if my feet are already killing me, you know what I mean? What's the difference between another hour? Yeah. But we went to leave, and she's like, I was like, do you need anything else? Like, can we help? She was like, that was the best moment of the entire day. She's like, and he already had left. And you got that, and like they were genuinely so thankful. Yeah. So even if it is photography, since you stay, like stuff like that could happen. But oftentimes the photographers are very because it's a lot of the same thing, to be honest, in photos.
Photos, and this is where we'll talk about videography. Kind of how that plays into it later on once we get into a deep dive of that.
So would you say that there's if somebody, just kind of to help anybody watching this, if they're talking with a photographer, they have no concept of how long it's going to take to get hair done and makeup and whatever. Yeah. So it should be a set time, right? Of when they're coming to capture these things.
Right. So one of the easiest ways to gauge is, in my questionnaires that I send to my couples before we actually sit down and talk, I ask, how many people are in your wedding party? I want to know, do you have 15 girls that need to get ready? Or do you only have 5, right? And most importantly, is your ceremony at 1 o'clock with 15 girls getting ready, right? Yeah. In which case, let's start the night before.
Start at 2 a.m.
Let's start at 2 a.m., right?
Yeah, I'll bring the coffee.
Right, exactly. I don't want to be there at 2 a.m. Please don't make me, right? But at the same time, you're going to be doing a lot of prep work.
Of course.
That plays into how the rest of your day flows.
Right.
Let's talk about timeline.
I think
that's a really good segue into timeline.
Yeah.
And I don't know that couples necessarily have a firm grasp on timeline whatsoever. Have either of you ever been to a wedding that started on time? No.
Yes, but also no.
What part of it?
The ceremony is almost always, right?
Yeah, always.
Usually spot on.
Okay.
Especially if it's at a church. They don't really give you a lot of...
Honestly, I've gotten quite a few that were at least 15 minutes.
Right.
Okay,
It's almost always... There's always a little bit of a delay.
Yeah.
It always takes you 15 minutes to herd people onto a limo.
It's amazing how long just moving people to where they need to be takes, and no one puts in a timeline.
And if you have a lot of parts to your wedding day, a lot of locations, a lot of travel, a lot of moving parts and people, plan buffer time always to every single part of your day. Because if you don't, you're going to realize, wow, I thought I was going to get my dress up in 10 minutes. Nope, it's going to take you 20. It's going to take you 30 minutes, right? Yeah. So timeline's
really, really important. I think also couples don't need to do it to think they need to figure out the timeline by themselves. I think this is why if you have a planner, shout out planners, right? Always definitely, if you can swing it in your budget, a planner
Which is different than the venue
coordinator, 1,000%. We'll talk about that.
Not to become,
Yeah, they're two different.
They're not to be mixed in there, because they're actually very different jobs.
They're very different roles. If you have a separate planner who is helping you and guiding your entire day from start to finish, then pairing that with an experienced photographer and figuring out your timeline, because these guys have done it. They were the two there, like we mentioned earlier, will be there the entire day for every part and piece of it. So like they know how long things really take and not how long you think they're gonna take, right? And how long it's gonna take to capture the moments and move people around. So like lean on them to create the timeline, and then make sure that timeline is communicated with all the rest of your vendor team. Usually a good planner will do that for you, but just over communicate it.
I feel like a lot of photographers write in their package timeline creation or timeline whatever.
Yeah.
So you don't have that in yours.
I don't have it in there because I do it anyway, right?
Sure.
It's not something I'm necessarily selling, because I think that's part of the job, right?
Yeah, it's something that should be.
I think every photographer, for the most part, will.
Yeah.
Even if they don't officially create a timeline with you,
they'll have their own internal timeline.
They'll have their own internal timeline, and
that's how they got to keep their day. If they're running an 8-hour package, for example, they need to know
how
that they're
long
hitting everything,
they're doing
right?
every single portion of the day, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times that may not necessarily match with your planner's timeline, or your videographer's timeline, or your content creator's timeline. So when you have a bunch of different sort of chefs in the kitchen, you basically end up in a situation where every one of them needs to work really well together. And that's very, very important. So if Kim and I are at the same wedding, her timeline is going to be very similar to mine, even though, she might not be there for the entire day. She's going to be there for the juiciest parts of the day. And that's part of that's to be expected. But your videographer, if you hire a videographer that's only there for 6 hours, but your wedding is a lot longer than 6 hours, plan for things to be missed, or you have them come later, right? So there are various little nuances and things. We can really get into a deep dive just on timeline, to be honest, because, but I think that if you have a conversation, an open dialogue with your professionals, trust them to know how a day will flow.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like, we were here last and you mentioned to pad it with an hour, right? Bridal hair and makeup.
Once you're done with hair and makeup.
Hair and makeup
is always the thing that pushes everything else.
Hair and makeup artists. Okay?
Hair and makeup,
wherever you are, I love you. But oh my God, nothing kicks a timeline back.
And not even necessarily them doing it. It's like the mother of the bride or, mother of the groom who don't normally get their makeup or hair done, and they're like, I look weird, or this is what I want, or
I didn't want lashes. Okay, but now I see everyone else has lashes, and now that was actually me at my friend's wedding. I was like, I don't want lashes.
No, that's common.
It's kind of nice, right? Yeah.
Y'all look good. I want to look good too. But it is the way that it is. So you just have to have a trust in your professionals to have seen that exact scenario over and over and over again to know it's probably going to happen for you.
Every single wedding.
And if it doesn't, that's great. But at least you have that buffer time kind of planned out.
My rule of thumb when it comes to having specifically buffer time for hair and makeup is, let's say you have a 4-hour window, 5-hour window for hair and makeup. And your hair and makeup team says, okay, in order to pull this off, we will arrive at 9. Tell them instead to come at 8. Tell them to come an hour early. Because by having that buffer, if they're on time, great. If they're not on time, you have a little bit extra buffer. And if they are on time, now you have extra space for first look with the girls, first look with dad, fun little moments that you otherwise would be rushing through if it wasn't for that buffer. Your flat lays are done, I think, for the most part, regardless. Just because, again, depending on when your photographer shows up. In my case, I'll show up literally when they show up. So I'm there to...
Good morning.
Good morning, hi. I'm walking in with everyone else. But I will do those flat lays when they're still getting situated. Some photographers will come about 2 hours into hair and makeup, expecting that there's not much to do in those first 2 hours. And they'll kind of do your flat lay photo and get everything else done as well.
Which again, not necessarily a red flag.
No, exactly. There is no right or wrong to it. I'm just, I came here an hour early as well to set up.
You're always early.
I'm always early. That's just me.
You show up early everywhere.
I try. I have like 5 bags of things that I have to unload. I have to like deal with a lot more stuff. So
I hear you.
Right?
I hear you. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about like hours, right, and coverage. Talked about the timeline component of, you know, this kind of package, let's talk a little bit like what is a second shooter, right? Because I think that this gets a little fuzzy too for people who have never hired a photographer
and
before.
this plays into your department as well as mine, because any kind of media team will have right the option to have a second or a third sometimes, right? Pros and cons. Let's see how you go ahead. Go first.
What is it? Let's define what is a second shooter.
Second shooter isn't a required. Some always shoot with a second shooter, some never do. Some have like a rotating, you know, second shooter. But the point is just the more people, the more content, the more photos, the more perspectives. So having a second shooter isn't necessary, I would say, but again, you're gonna get more. Like it's just more bodies getting, you know, doing the same thing. So I almost always have Dana if she can come, my second shooter if she can come, because also like is it a fail safe? Is that the right word?
That is the right word.
A backup human being.
Yeah, a backup person, somebody who also like we've talked about it with Jess Tranquil.
Shout out Jess Tranquil.
JTI. Yeah. She
is that what she calls herself? Is that the abbreviation?
I'm gonna call her that for now.
That's
I'll see her tomorrow and be like, what's up, JTI?
Heck yes.
So we were talking about it, and sometimes like they can get headaches, like photographers, you know, you just get like a headache and you need a break or whatever. Like
I pack Excedrin.
Yeah, some
in
people
preparation,
is my
right?
go-to.
Some people plan for it.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, everyone
we
should,
were talking
right,
about it before, and like the pros and cons of having one. And again, you don't need one, but like when this did happen to me before, my mics stopped working. My mic stopped working, and Dana was there. So thank God.
Perfect.
My phone died at 50%. Dana was there. I did grab the bride's, you know, phone, but you know, it was one of those things.
Right?
Yeah.
It's just it is a lot of pressure on one single human, right? Who is so responsible. Those moments don't happen like a second time.
Exactly.
Right? So having your photographer that you know and you love and you trust, that's great. But then also, and couples don't need to go and find a second shooter, just to clarify that is someone who, if that's in the package, or it's something that's requested, or it's something that a photographer traditionally does. Like it's a package deal with your photographer that you find, and then who has the same kind of style, the same kind of personality. They have a rapport. You know, so when someone's walking down the aisle, you know, one person's getting that shot, and then someone maybe is getting a shot from the side to get the reactions of people. You know, so it's different angles of things, right? But it's like having a mini-me of the person that you hire.
Yeah, I don't mean to scare anybody by saying like you need two people, because what if something goes wrong? I mean,
but it is a reality.
It's an automatic built-in fail-safe, right?
And it's a question that you should ask when you're hiring somebody of, you're a human. Like Billy, you're about to have but your wife is about to have a baby. Right?
I'm helping by being emotional support.
You're going to be very helpful. It's going to be great. But, you know, life happens. And so if you happen to have you have a backup plan because you're a professional, you know? And asking that question of, if you're not available on the day, what happens?
Exactly, which we will get into a deep dive
really
about that,
important.
I think. It's very important.
Yeah.
Finishing up the second photography topic, I
Yes.
think that's very... In your situation, it's a little bit more optional. In my situation, it's also very optional.
Sure.
But it really depends on very specifics that I will, you know, talk about with my couples.
I keep thinking about this, so I figured this is a good time to ask.
Yeah.
So when you are meeting with a photographer, I didn't ask any of these questions for myself.
I didn't either.
Yeah, like, do you have backup?
That's why we're doing this. That's why we're doing all this,
Do you
right?
have backup batteries? Do you have like, what happens? Like, so do you
What are your
ask
plans?
those types of questions? Like I've talked to photographers and stuff who have had issues, and thank God they had that second SD card, or thank God they had those extra batteries or whatever. So what is an appropriate question without, because some people I'm sure don't even really understand what an SD card is. Like, you know what I mean?
They don't know what they don't know.
Exactly.
Some are overly trusting.
Right. I will get into that because that's a lot of information to dump.
Yeah.
But I'm going to just real quick about second photography.
Yeah.
Just super quick. I want to wrap that up.
Yeah.
The way that I personally work is that you mentioned this earlier, that it's very important for a second photographer to work well with your main photographer, right? So that's why you're not responsible as the couple to try and find someone else.
No.
The photographer will find you a second photographer. In my case, they are people that I feel like have the same kind of mentality that I do with weddings, that they genuinely feel invested in my couples, right? And that's more important to me than their actual craft of photography a lot of times. And I think that there are very specific things you need to consider with having a second versus not having a second. I promise we'll get into the backup stuff, because that's a whole can of worms we'll get into.
That's a whole lot.
I have all kinds of stories to tell about that. So when it comes to having the second photographer, there are very specific moments that you really should have one, and there are very specific moments where it's like, okay, we can probably make do without. If your getting ready locations are spread out across town, 20-minute drive, 40-minute drive, whatever it may be.
Someone's in a hotel, someone's mom and dad.
Exactly. And what ends up happening is, if it's possible to squeeze in a trip over, again, are you paying for enough hours with your photographer? Or do you have a crazy photographer like me that doesn't really specifically do hours? If that's the case, right, I can drive to the groom's getting ready, or the other partner's getting ready. But if that doesn't work out for you, you will absolutely need a second photographer. Another thing you are almost always going to miss, unfortunately, when it comes to second photography is if the processional going up the aisle, having a second photographer allows you to create that second perspective, and you get a back of the dress photo with, the back of your person, whether it's dad or whoever's escorting you down the aisle, and the train as you walk up.
Yeah.
It's not always doable without
the groom.
The shot of the groom. You can do without a second photographer.
Okay.
Girl, please,
right?
right?
I just got
girl,
schooled.
please,
My
right?
God.
No. So
I think that's the one moment that
Everybody knows.
everybody
that's
knows.
The one
Ever
you
since
He
20,
doesn't cry. I'm turning around and coming back.
ever
to
since
life.
27 dresses came out, that became so important,
Yes.
right? And it used to be that you really needed a second photographer to be able to capture that moment. The way that I work is, and a lot of wedding photographers nowadays, it's becoming pretty ubiquitous. We would stand essentially opposite of the groom or opposite of your partner, and then whoever's going to be at the front of the aisle. And the goal is we are shooting down the aisle as well as paying attention to their facial reactions.
Yeah.
And if their facial reactions, especially if they're very emotive, you have a lot of opportunities.
Sure.
But there will be moments where it's like, I will be working with a groom and he's just like serious. But then my camera's just pointed at him the entire time. And I managed to
get that one glistening.
And I got a little like jaw clench.
Sure.
And I was like, that's what I needed.
That's
right?
the moment.
It took 45 seconds for that to happen. But that is part of the job.
Yeah.
That is
Billy's
part of the job.
literally like this.
I hold
have
you have footage of me doing this. I hold two cameras at the same time like a crazy person. But it used to be that you absolutely need a second photographer.
Game. Every time you say you're a crazy person, you're a weirdo,
Right.
you're a unicorn, all this stuff.
That was
Right.
yeah, all kinds of stuff. I love it.
Oh yes, exactly.
I love it.
So those are moments where a second photographer really does play,
Yeah.
right? Another example would be if your timeline is really, really short, and you are very crunched for time. Portraits are still happening, cocktail hour is happening. Having a second photographer allows the main photographer to stay with your main wedding party, while the second photographer goes and does cocktail candidates or details of the reception space. Whereas normally, if you have one photographer, well, they can't be in two places at once,
You can't clone people, guys.
Exactly. So
not today.
these are conversations to have with your professionals.
Yeah. Can I tell you, I am not a photographer, okay? And this stuff keeps me up at night because when I do events, like wedding shows are just me. Like I have someone who works with me a couple hours a week to be there on site that day to help out. But I can't go down.
You cannot.
I can't go down, and neither can your photographer. You know?
Right.
Because you're in it.
You're in it.
Live.
Right.
Not for nothing, and this is not against obviously any other category, it's just different, is if it's a florist, someone can deliver those flowers.
Someone else can always drop it off.
There's some flexibility in room.
Right.
And when it comes,
for you guys.
when it comes to photography, right, and to a certain extent, content creation as well, you have various, sort of backup plans in place, or you should, as a professional. So when it comes to photography, being that unfortunately without us, right, what do you get at the end of the day? Maybe videography as well if you book that category, but if you didn't, we are unfortunately incredibly crucial. And
yes or no kind of thing.
Yes or no kind of thing,
Right.
exactly, right? So. In my particular case, and not everyone will have as crazy of a backup plan as I may have, but
Crazy
Drink.
count. Crazy count.
Drink. So
Drink your latte.
We're
drink
putting
your
that
latte.
at the bottom.
We are
Ding,
the,
ding.
the amount of times, right? So I'm coming at it from being that I was an engineer, like kind of like I have like a 5-tier plan of like what
Weird.
specifically happens.
Never would have checked that for you.
Yeah, it
Right? Doesn't track at all, right? Who is this person? So one of the things that's very important is that, we all kind of know each other within the community. All the photographers, everyone that, works well together, we all kind of know each other. And for example, with our upcoming baby, right? Every single wedding that might have fallen in or around that due date,
Yeah.
I had a backup wedding photographer, another professional ready to go for each of my dates.
Yeah.
The wedding community as a whole will a lot of times will pass each other referrals, weddings, and a lot of times we'll say, okay, wow, I have something coming up or whatever it is, I have a medical health issue, can someone cover me?
Yeah.
And we have a huge network of people that we trust,
Yeah.
that we know will do a great job.
That is
So
the benefit of having a very saturated photography community.
that is
there's
true.
Options.
There's a lot of options,
Yeah.
and everyone, and you're kind of the hub when it comes to kind of the local community here. So we all, I could just be like, hey Heather, right?
I need a person. Yeah.
Right, I need a person for this.
Yeah.
So that's literally the first step.
Yeah.
The second, backup plan is ultimately, do we have a second photographer? Because if we have a second photographer, that is your built-in backup person.
Yeah.
You just made a face.
Because like if you are having a baby, not necessarily.
Oh,
me.
no. Well, actually, even with that, because we weren't sure, right? What if we end up what if my wife goes into labor the day of the wedding? Well, I was going to bring a second photographer to all of my weddings, regardless of if they were
Sure.
booked. And that was originally the plan, right?
Yeah.
The plan was second photographer was coming with me. So if I need to run to the hospital, she can finish the rest of the wedding day without me, right? No pressure, right? And
What's your wife's name?
Sarah.
Sarah.
Yeah.
Sarah. You keep that baby in there.
Yeah.
Until the wedding day is done. Yeah.
Right? So beyond that, having the second photographer is an automatic built-in to a backup plan. If it's something where, and this is where me personally, if it's like I just have a cold, whatever it may be beforehand, and I know that it's like, oh, okay, I'm gonna be a little bit knocked out, but I can still function.
Sure.
Right? I'll wear a mask. I will still come to your wedding. I don't want to get grandma sick, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will, still be able to. I'll pump myself full of cold medicine and still be there for your wedding day. What keeps photographers up at night are things like, what if I get into a car accident
Yeah.
the day of,
Yeah.
right? What if something happens to me the morning of?
Yeah.
So my specific backup plan for this, which I think I haven't heard that many other photographers do, I'm just a crazy person, ding, right? In my car, I pack a specific bag with a separate camera, batteries, memory cards, and lenses. And the goal is, if I'm stuck in a ditch somewhere, or I'm in a hospital and at least conscious,
God forbid. Okay. Yeah.
I will have this bag with me in some capacity.
Like knock on
Knock
stuff.
on, right?
Please.
And then I'll notify my couple and I'll say, hey, can you have like Uncle Jim or Dad or your best man, whoever, right? Whoever can just drive over, meet me.
In my mangled car.
In my
Leave you in
mangled-
the ditch, but grab the camera.
Leave me in the ditch. Exactly. Don't worry.
coming for me.
Don't worry about me. I'm getting towed, right? But I'm stuck here. I can't
Yeah.
get to you. Come and grab my camera,
Yeah.
and at the very least, you'll still have someone who can take photos for you for the day.
Okay.
And then afterwards, just please return my camera back.
Sure.
And if you don't, I will keep your.
How does that go with money?
So I will basically, realistically, the plan is I would refund you for everything minus editing, is the idea.
Yeah.
But I won't refund you if you don't give me my camera back.
Sure. Well, there's that.
Right,
Yeah.
so that's my.
This equipment is expensive.
I think that's the best thing that I can come up with for
Yeah.
the nightmare scenario that I
Yeah.
can think of, right? Beyond that, just like you were saying, memory cards, backup plans, all that stuff. Every photographer should have a very specific, robust, step-by-step plan, because these photos cannot be replaced.
These moments cannot be
These
recreated.
moments cannot
Yeah.
be. Well, they can be sort of recreated, but you're never going to
emotion's
create.
not the same.
The emotions are never going to be
Yeah.
the same. Exactly. So. Every photographer, for the most part, should be shooting with cameras that have dual card slots. So 2 memory cards. All your photos and videos should be recorded to 2 cards at once. So if your cards ever fail, you have a backup.
Yeah.
The moment that they come home, or a lot of times you even do it on site, the moment they come home, their footage or their photos should be backed up to multiple locations. The rule is actually 3-2-1, 3 backups, 2 locations, and I forget what the 1 stands for actually, but that's the
That's
terminology.
a lot.
Yeah. So in my case,
I mean, I love the overkill. Don't
the
get me wrong.
overkill. The overkill
but-
is the right engineering, right?
Yeah.
A little crazy, but. I will come home and I will have a network attached storage. So it's like a hard drive array. All my photos and video go right to that, which then instantly get backed up to 2 different cloud locations. And then I have 2 working hard drives. So your photos are going to be in 5 locations
Keep
at
track
once.
of all this, just like logistically, all of
I'm a
these- 'cause
giant
you're-
nerd, right?
You've got all these photos from all these weddings and like
Duplicates,
all this,
backups on
duplicates
backups.
and
Yup.
backups
I've
and
seen
backups.
some use like little things and then write on like the little case what
Okay, like
the
what
thing,
it
and then
is.
they have like drawers.
Yep.
So,
And I
like, they
never,
put that-
I don't
yeah.
format my memory cards until I have everything backed up already. So again, it's network drive, 2 working drives, and 2 cloud locations.
Yeah.
So that's 5 backups.
Okay, I think
of
that
everything.
this
I'm excessive. Please don't do what I do. Or
This-
do what I do, you know?
I feel like this might be like an underlying thing in this field.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna call him my brother-in-law, for lack of a better word, because they're not married yet. But he works on film a lot, and he has a ton of gear and a ton of equipment. He does a
Wow,
lot of
okay.
commercials and all kinds of stuff,
Okay,
like in
cool.
New York. Fine, he's great.
Yeah.
But it's funny every time I go into their apartment because in his office, the amount of meticulous organization and labeling and file folders
Mm-hmm.
and things with more labels than I could possibly imagine.
Especially on film, you don't get a backup.
You don't get a backup. It is what it is.
It is what it is, right?
So like having a structure and a system, and I think from the couple's perspective, that's really reassuring. You know what I mean? I don't think that from the couples need to know like, oh, I have it in 3 cloud locations and this and whatever. But like, ask what is your backup system?
What is your backup
Right.
system?
And I
Do
think
you
that
have
that's-
one? Do you have
that's a question people need to feel comfortable asking. You're not
Yeah.
going to offend anyone.
No,
Right.
Like again, if you're offending someone, it might be a red flag. You know what I mean?
Well, sure, right.
And then
Because-
in like the contract too, those
Yeah.
are so hard to like really decipher exactly like is this a good contract?
A lot of times it's not even something that specifically gets,
In the
written in the
contract, yeah.
contract because
Yeah.
it's just, it's an expectation, right?
Yeah.
But this is a conversation that I think that when you have it with your professionals, with your media team, every media team, every professional that does weddings, again, going back to what I was saying earlier, you need to be comfortable with all aspects of photography to even be doing weddings, right?
Yeah.
So this is one of those things
Yeah.
where you should have a system in place
For sure.
before you do weddings.
Yeah.
If you don't, you're taking a risk every time,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
right? And you're taking a
Absolutely.
risk with other people's memories.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
So-
scary.
That's why I
scary.
couldn't be a photographer. Like it's just different.
It's different, right?
Like that first kiss, as long as I'm rolling, I'm getting it. You're like,
Yeah.
da-da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah. But I think that's just, it's the nature of the game.
Yeah.
And it's different mediums,
Mm-hmm.
right? But you already also have backup plans. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You
You
already
have
have
a
backup
backup
plans.
plan
I think
as
that's
well,
just being a professional.
All of her stuff goes on the cloud the moment you
Yeah.
you go home.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Shared album.
Shared
Yeah.
album, exactly. So multiple people have access to it just in case, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I think just like knowing that these questions are something that should be asked and you should have a comfort level with whomever you're hiring that they at least have thought about it. Maybe not to the crazy extent of if I'm in a ditch, know that the bag is labeled.
Yeah, I don't
back
know
of the
anyone.
trunk.
I don't know anyone that does that. I think that I'm just like picturing
I
the
mean,
nightmare
that's
scenario, and I'm
Quite
like,
the investment to have just an extra camera.
well, sure.
Yeah.
I'm just like, what do I do, right? What do I do in that scenario?
But
I
it's
don't
all
want
these
to. I don't want to just leave you
unknowns.
hanging, right?
Yeah, it's the unknowns, right? It's like, what if it rains? What if it rains on
oh,
your wedding day?
What if it rains on a wedding day?
Right?
Isn't it ironic?
Isn't it ironic?
That's what
right?
Alana said. The
So-
ancient millennial.
The ancient. I'm the
Listen, that
ancient.
came from me.
I
I'm the crusty
know.
ancient millennial here,
just-
right? So,
We're just
Crusty
rubbing off on you.
nerd unicorn.
right?
But that kind of like plays into two. Like I hate to not give like business or clients to
Yeah.
new photographers.
Of course.
But it's something to weigh because
Yeah.
they can't afford necessarily as much as you can. They can't I don't know. Don't have as much experience in different venues and stuff like
Of
that.
course.
So I think it's important to know that bare minimum a beginner photographer should have somebody they could not outsource to,
Yeah.
but refer to,
Backup,
and then backup batteries, backup SD cards, like
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
is
I think
probably-
even beginners though, at least, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but like a lot of them have at least had experience second shooting.
Right.
Hopefully.
Right? Hopefully, right?
Hopefully,
So
right.
they're
What are
not
you
just
doing?
like,
Right.
Yeah.
I've never shot a
At
wedding
least that's
before.
that- yeah.
Woo,
No.
you know?
And this really
Talk about
plays
confidence,
into
Jesus.
right. But this really plays into the cost as well,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
When you look
Let's
at
talk
a
about the cost.
Yeah.
if you,
Can
when
we
you-
jump to the cost? Because I think that like that's
what
really
people care
kind of
for-
where
care about.
a lot of this education kind of stems from. Is that like some people are charging a lot of money? Some people are not charging a lot of money. And there could be good quality on both ends.
There could be, yeah.
But like, what are you paying for?
What are you paying
Yeah.
for?
What are the
There's a
dollars
lot of
mean?
elements in that.
You're
Yeah.
paying for exactly what you just described,
Yeah.
right? An experience in knowing what to do when things go wrong.
Yeah.
An experience in being comfortable with all aspects of that particular lane
And
that you're in.
I just saw a post recently, maybe it was on your account or something, but how much different things go up every year. Just SD cards go up in price.
Yeah.
and
we can
all
thank
of those
we can thank
things.
my
AI
God.
for everything is now double
Yeah.
in cost
Yeah.
because of AI. Hard
So
drives,
it's like
memory cards,
skill,
everything.
experience, but then just like materials and
Right.
stuff. So there is a difference between people who are charging a lot rightfully and some that just like, oh, I'm gonna make my price this high because I don't need any more weddings.
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
if you're gonna
Sure.
pay that, so.
Right.
Yeah.
When you look at it, and this, you can always kind of tell too. Just looking at, a lot of times, just looking at somebody's website. I don't specifically say Instagram because Instagram is very curated, and when you look at their website, it's a better way to kind of experience how they work.
Sure.
You can kind of tell the varying styles, the varying venues, the varying conditions that they work in, how comfortable they are.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why, again, it's important to show not just your favorite photos from a wedding day, but in my opinion, show a lot more than that.
Yeah, show the rainy day photos.
Show the rainy
Yeah.
day
Right?
photos.
Yeah.
And speaking of rainy day photos, you mentioned this earlier. So clear umbrellas are always a great plan.
Yeah.
I think a lot of couples know that and they plan ahead for it. If you don't plan for it, I do, and I bring 20 clear umbrellas with me because hopefully that's enough for your wedding party. And if not, we can rotate people in.
I was gonna ask if I could rent those from you.
You can, yeah. They're in my
April
truck right
10th?
now. Yeah, they're in my car right now. Do you want to borrow them?
Do you
Yeah.
have a wedding
Yeah.
April 10th?
I don't think so, no. Yeah, you can borrow them.
Perfect.
I,
And
um,
this is why you need good partners.
Yeah, exactly. You can
Right?
absolutely
This is
borrow
like
them.
literally was
in
thinking
Right?
of it.
action,
Yeah.
like why you need good partners.
And then you can, in my case, I go a little bit beyond that. I don't expect that every single one of my couples will have wooden hangers,
Yeah.
right, for their dresses. So I bring 20 wooden hangers for your bridesmaids'
Because you're
dress.
a
Crazy person. Right? Because it's just like, these are the things that keep me up at night. What would happen and what could I do to make it a little bit
Yeah.
easier
Yeah.
for me
So that's where
to
the,
be there?
Yeah, experience comes in because you don't know what you don't know.
yeah.
And yeah, the overarching point is to have an idea of your wedding, the vision, but it's not your job to think of all of those things.
It's not. A lot of times
necessarily.
you have so many things on your plate as the
Yeah,
couple, right?
yeah.
You don't want or you don't know what to think for,
Yeah.
to think about,
Yeah.
for plan for ahead of time.
So my question was, what do you think if a photographer has their pricing on their website and if they don't? Like, what is your thought
Okay.
on that?
Ooh, okay.
I'm curious.
So,
You go and then
Do you have
I'll
an
go.
opinion? Okay.
Yes,
know what?
I have a very strong opinion.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. I kind of
You-
want to.
you go first.
You want me to go first?
Yeah,
So, there's multiple camps.
Yeah.
I think that if you are more of the kind of luxury editorial style, it is more expected that you would actually not show your prices. That's actually the common kind of trope. I think that a lot of a middle ground for a lot of photographers, and probably same with content creation. A lot of vendors actually, they'll have like an average spend or like a starting at rate, which really kind of tells the couples, okay, this is the price range you can expect to spend, and then let's get into the nitty gritty
Right.
during the actual call. So, in my case, and this is actually indicative more so of relatively newer photographers or more budget photographers. Technically, budget photographers will, kind of just list all their prices. I'm in between on that. I think that I want my couples to have the least amount of friction possible when it comes to booking me.
Right.
I think that I don't want you to have to try and play a crossword puzzle and guess what my prices
People will
are.
leave your website.
People will leave your website, right? So instead, I will literally, I don't even do a starting at rate. What you see on my website is literally what you will pay.
Yeah.
There are no hidden fees. There's no little bits and bobs. In fact, all the things that you can add, I just listed all
Add
that
them on.
right
Right,
there.
right.
Right,
Do the
It's all
math.
it's all
It's
there.
there, yeah.
Add to cart, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But like, I want my couples to talk to me about their wedding vision, not about how much it costs. I want you to figure that out before you talk to me. And if that fits in your budget and you love everything about what we're about to do, let's get into the details of that. Rather than how much is your wedding going to cost. Right?
Are you on that? Are you on that?
I'm so
curious.
Let's hear the spicy.
For the most part, right? So I think that Gen Z now, right? So and they're all, I want my information. I want it. We're in a chat GPT. Anything you want to know is out there, kind of a thing. And if I have to look too hard for it, or God forbid I have to talk to somebody, I'm moving on to the next.
Right.
I just
How do
can't
I have
I'm that way.
Right?
The friction thing is so important.
It's so important, right? And I think that it prevents people who are really talented, if they don't have their stuff on the website, from being booked. Because, and I get the luxury aspect of it, it's a little bit different. If you're booking someone who's $15,000,
Right.
like, that's a different kind of
You're
price
going into it knowing
Yes.
they're a celebrity wedding photographer, right?
It's a different kind of a thing. You understand their clientele. You know whether or not that's something you can actually afford.
Right.
Or
I
not.
mean, Jose Villa shot Haley Steinfeld.
Yeah.
The hiccups.
Sorry, Haley Steinfeld.
Not your fault.
And you know, our local Buffalo celebrity, right? And he doesn't list his prices. Because you don't need to. Because he's Jose Villa.
You know that if Haley and Josh can afford it,
You probably can't.
it's probably
okay.
in your range. And that's okay.
Right?
You can take some inspo from it, but that's the inspo, right?
That's the, right.
But I think for pretty much anyone else, you need to, at the very least, put a starting at price.
Right. Have a range so your couples know what they're getting into.
And
right?
also, it eliminates from the couples being disappointed, right? With sticker shock.
And you getting ghosted.
And you getting ghosted.
Sure,
and it eliminates, it filters out for the vendors, right? Because then you're not like dealing with people who are just looking for information because you haven't provided it.
I don't like that initial email of like, what are your prices? Or are you
I get
available?
that all the
right?
time.
First question. Eliminate
And
it
it's
off
on
the
my
plate.
website.
Right.
Like
And-
you want qualified leads. You don't just want leads.
Right.
Right? And there's a really big difference between what those two things are.
Right.
Someone who's like, yes, oh, you're in my budget and I really like your work and now we're gonna have a conversation, versus I'm sending out a bunch of spam emails because I don't know anything about you. I like your work, but I don't know if I can afford you.
Right.
You know?
I think, to be fair, there's never necessarily a right or wrong way of doing this, right?
yeah.
I think that you guys are more opinionated than I am. I don't want to throw other photographers under the bus that do the way that they do, right?
Different opinions,
Right.
and that's fine, but they're just not right.
Okay.
Wow.
I'm kidding.
Look, it's your business. You can run your business however you want to. But at the end of the day, the market dictates what it will
Minimize friction, right?
minimize. Look at the Amazon world we live in. Look at the ChatGPT world we live in.
I want my things delivered tomorrow.
If it doesn't
Right.
come tomorrow, I'm annoyed. Okay, and I should not be.
Exactly.
That's an unrealistic
It's the instant
expectation.
gratification.
Right.
And I think two things, I'm going to forget the second, but
Write it down.
I have been writing things down. Uh-oh. Cut this. Wait, what were we just talking about?
No, we're not cutting this. This is going to be part of it.
This is blooper. This
This
is
is-
good prime
yeah.
blooper.
Yeah.
Oh, I think also, like, I didn't have my prices at one point, and it's because I wasn't confident at the time.
Yeah.
So I also find that I understand that, like, especially if you're a beginner or you like are comparing yourself.
You're figuring it out.
You know.
Yeah, I get
so
it.
I'm just trying to say, like, that's not a red flag. I'm not trying to be
No, it
a jerk
shouldn't.
about
It should never be,
I
right.
just mean, like, I think that's gonna tell you if they're what kind of, I don't know, and also, so the other thing was, maybe this is more for like the vendor side. I don't know if you do these for the vendors specifically, but when it comes to like friction, they're, and I think I used that word with you before, like your link tree, like even hitting too many freaking buttons.
It's annoying.
How
People
many
don't
hoops do I have to
like
jump
it.
through to get to the
It's
thing?
like,
Yeah.
it's website mentality. It's
Yeah.
website construction mentality. The more clicks I have between my starting point and my ending point, people drop off.
Yeah.
You
know what I mean?
lose,
They just
yeah.
Like,
you-
do you want me or not? Damn.
Yeah, like it's too obnoxious,
Yeah.
you know?
Because when you're shopping, especially for photographers, just because there are so many of us, you have like 50 tabs open.
You
Yeah.
have so many tabs.
You have
open.
tabs, all the tabs open. Your poor computer is
X
like
out of
how-
one, you could probably find another. You know,
Right,
like, so
exactly.
you really have to stand out in that. I think that also helps. Like if somebody's looking at 50 photographers and they're like, I can find a couple of the same, if they don't have their prices on their website, I'm not going to
moving
take
on.
that extra step. Yeah. So
I think that that's actually a really good segue into what we kind of touched on a little bit earlier, but in my view anyway, I think that when you pay for me as a wedding photographer / videographer, I think that it's very important that what you get out of it, I think that I would place more value on my personality and how I work well with you as the couple, and less emphasis on the actual photos. Because I think that, because again, you know, wedding photography media in general is a relatively saturated vendor market. A lot of people can take great photos. But not everyone will gel with you on a wedding day. Not everyone will be as invested.
And blend almost kind of this happy medium, blending into the background while making you feel comfortable.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's a very fine
and
balance.
some people might want that, like, this is where we're getting, like, we are probably aware of a photographer around here that has that very, like, I'm taking the lead. I wouldn't like that, but I know that, like, my best friend, she would have liked that.
And
like,
some couples are very much like, please tell us what to do at all moments of the day.
Exactly.
Right?
So it all really...
It all has to be like a happy little formula, right? And so I think that I am a big proponent of having pricing on the website, just tying it back into that, because when you're looking at the style, right? You're looking through the galleries, you're looking at Instagram, you get an idea of what this person's work looks like. You're starting to get an idea maybe from their Instagram of their personality. Like, are they funny? Are they pitching themselves as like a serious kind of photographer? Are they pitching themselves as like your new best friend? You know what I mean? And some of the verbiage and the copy, even on their website and Instagram, will kind of give you a clue into like what they're probably like in real life. And then that match it with their pricing. And when you have all three of those things together and you're going back to your wedding vision finder, which I can't stress enough, then you can see, okay, do all these things line up? Okay, these 4 photographers line up. Now let's have a conversation with them.
It's going to save you time, you know, everybody else time.
And overwhelm, like, because the photographer and the venue and the potential planner and the florist and the DJ and the caterer and everything else, like, it gets very overwhelming. So, like, spreadsheets, man.
So many.
So you get a photographer, I guess, with the payment to, like, since a photographer takes up a lot of your budget, is that like a first thing that you would invest in? I don't even know.
It's typically like the second after the venue, second or third. Usually it's one of the first ones after you have the date.
And a lot of photographers, they get booked up very quickly. I mean, it's, you know, again, what are you prioritizing on your day? If those photos are really important to you and you have a particular photographer you really want to work with, book early, because you're not the only one who wants that photographer.
Right.
And
also,
like,
you know,
30% of weddings are done in September and October here in Buffalo. And so there's only so many
so many weekends in September and October, right?
Exactly.
Plus, if you book early on, you're less likely to have the photography or, you know, whatever vendor prices go up. If you wait till the last minute, well, you could have booked it, you know, let's say 6 months earlier, and it could have saved you a few $100s, or that sort of thing.
So we hinted a little bit at this a couple times throughout our conversation, but videography and content creation. Can you guys just walk a little bit for those who might not be familiar?
Absolutely.
What is the difference between them, and what is the place kind of in a wedding for both?
I think that I will preface this by saying that since, you know, I'm more of the photography and videography side of things, and Kim, you're the expert on content creation, we really want to, you know, have this kind of conversation. I think it's very important for a lot of couples to understand that at the end of the day, everything beyond your your marriage certificate, everything beyond your marriage certificate is technically a luxury. You're married, now what, right? What do we do? Well, let's invite the most important people in our lives to celebrate that day with us. So now you need a space. Now you need to feed them, right? Now we need to plan for pretty much everything else after that point. So this is typically where photography ends up being placed a little bit higher as far as priority list, because what do you get at the end of the day? And then after photography, you would look at, how do I capture the day in motion? And now you have 2 options. You used to just have one. Now you have 2 options. There's literally a sort of a right shoe that fits everyone. There's a right size fits all for every couple out there now. When it comes to, you know, videography, I think that the goal of what we produce is, I want you to be able to watch this on your anniversary. I want you to be able to watch this in 5 years, in 10 years, share it with your children, watch it with your grandkids. I want you to, when your husband is away, for a work meeting, out of town for a weekend, and you're home by yourself and you're not sure what to do and you're feeling kind of lonely, put on your wedding video.
Sure.
And you're just gonna have a wonderful time, and you're gonna call him and be like, where are you? I miss you. But
that would be sweet. I'd be like, let's go with the girls.
Right?
Wine and charcuterie night for me.
Well, yes. But after that, when you're like, I'm hugging the body pillow instead of you, right?
Sure.
What do you put that on?
Yeah.
You put that on. That's the goal of videography, I think, that you want to create something that is a cinematic story of your day.
Is there a range though? Because I feel like that's kind of where people get confused between each. So some videographers, for instance, you do full day, you do a smaller one, and then you do a smaller one. So I feel like some videographers, maybe even now with content, are offering these weird hybrid opportunities.
Right. It's a weird time to be alive.
So when should you it really is.
Dang.
Yeah.
I think the barrier to entry is really the only big thing to think about.
Right.
That's the easiest thing to think about.
That's the easiest thing to think about, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the statistic nationally is only about 30 to 40% of weddings book a videographer.
Yeah.
And granted, these statistics were before content creation, so now content creation has definitely kind of changed that statistic a little bit.
Absolutely.
But a lot of times, the limiting factor is budget.
Sure.
Can I afford to double my wedding media budget by booking a separate media team for video? And this is where, kind of a self-plug here, this is where hybrid coverage, what I produce, the goal is I want to sort of cater to a couple that says, okay, you know what, I really want to have video, I want to have that motion captured, but at the same time, I don't know if I can spend another $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 to hire an entire other team. The difference is that I invest in the equipment, I have a smaller footprint, smaller overhead for a single team. But if my team can capture everything for you, right, you end up spending a little bit less, but you kind of get the best of both worlds. And you brought this up earlier. I produce a 3 to 6 minute highlight video, very much just kind of like a music video, really just kind of the creme de la creme of your day. Emotions captured, all that fun stuff. A featurette length, which is 9 to 15 minutes. The goal is if you have speeches, you have more moments that you want to let kind of naturally breathe and play out. That's where your 9 to 15 minute plays in. And then I also offer a 30 to 60 minute full length video. The goal here is it's not going to be the 2-hour documentary VHS that's sitting in your mom's basement, right, that you're never going to watch. This is a curated, combination of high emotional moments along with fully recorded ceremonies, first dances, speeches, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
So it's a full telling of your day, as well as, kind of all the little juicy morsels, exactly, juicy snippets there. So that's where, kind of videography plays in.
And how long, before we go to content, what is the duration of time between when you take it and when you get it?
So for me, my delivery window is still within 4 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And I still maintain that 4 to 8 weeks for video.
That's really great. I think that's one thing we didn't touch upon when you're asking and interviewing photographers.
That's right,
is time frame.
Time frame.
So just to jump back, because I see this come up often, ask your potential photographer and videographer and even content creator, what is the delivery time frame?
Good.
Because some are 4 to 8 weeks. Some, particularly when it's like peak wedding season and every single weekend, multiple weddings per weekend, it takes a long time to go back to that editing, right? It might be 12 weeks. It might be 16 weeks.
I feel like 12 to 16 is standard.
That's also standard, right?
And
exactly.
a lot of people, they get all excited and then they're waiting. And they're waiting, and they're waiting, and then they're freaking out.
Yeah.
Because they're not getting their photos back, and it's because they didn't either ask or read that fine print.
Right.
Now, most people have it in the contract, obviously.
In the contract, in the
but
FAQ.
make sure you ask, and you kind of go into it knowing how long you're going to be waiting for. And if you're not getting your sneak peeks, or you're not getting your full galleries by a certain time, make sure you're having that open dialogue with people afterwards.
Open dialogue is incredibly important to every moment of your, really all your wedding planning.
Yeah.
Right? If you can't get a hold of your wedding photographer or your planner or your content creator when you have a question, if they're not getting back to you for weeks and weeks and weeks, that's not good.
That's
right?
red flag.
They should be just as invested.
Fake paddle.
Red flag.
Yeah.
They should be just as invested in your wedding day as any other vendor.
Yeah.
So if somebody else is getting back to you within a couple of days, within an hour, whatever it is, but then one vendor is just taking weeks and weeks and weeks.
Sure.
Find out what's going on.
Yeah.
Right? You don't want to run into a problem the day of.
Yeah, and also just one last thing, and then we're going to talk about content creation piece of it, is having a bit of grace on it, because most weddings in Western New York are compressed in a very tight time
So
frame,
compressed. Oh my
right?
goodness. September
And
is crazy.
I don't talk to my wedding vendors after
We disappear.
October,
Yeah,
right?
we
They just
disappear.
kind of go into hibernation because they're in high editing mode, and I get that. But like having some grace and understanding this is their craziest time of the year. So if they got back to you in 2 hours in January, they might not be getting back to you in 2 hours in the middle of September.
Right.
So like don't freak out,
Yeah.
be persistent. They should still be communicative within a relatively
Listen to
normal
your gut,
period of
honestly.
time.
Yeah.
But
You have
listen
to
to your
like
gut.
post on Buffalo Brides and be like, is this weird? It's weird.
It's weird.
Like,
Right.
you know.
If you're taking it to Facebook, it's weird.
Right.
Okay,
Exactly.
let's get into content creation
Content
a little
creation.
bit. Can you
So-
kind of like pivot and give the exactly what it is? I
The
know we talked about it a
perfect
little earlier.
middle ground.
Yes.
I would say the perfect middle.
Exactly.
And people will offer different things. Again, like it's relatively new in that different people might offer different things.
Yeah.
I'm introducing different things into mine, like the cameras, different things like that, like 360 cameras. But content is basically like, it's so cliche and so annoying probably, but like it's like your best friend for the day so that your best friend can be with you and be in the content and not be counted on to do that. Or like your aunt who maybe she didn't even press record. Like she thinks she's recording and it's not. Like
With an iPad.
yeah.
In the middle of the
had-
ceremony.
I have had people, so I've tried to record content for the various projects that I do, and then someone has to go and record me so that
Right.
the whole
Right.
group can be in it.
Yeah.
And then they don't hit record. Or they hit it too late, like after
Yeah.
the thing is done, and then it's just us walking off. and
Or it's like
just
recording the front camera.
Yeah, and I just see like an eyeball or something. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's really important to have someone who knows what they're doing, who has a vision about it, right? Like, so I'm not trying to steal your thunder, but you do some really cool stuff where there's like cool transitions, or like you have a game plan. At our last wedding show, we all had to like look in a particular
that
way
was
in a
cute.
particular order, and like no one could get it right. But like at the end of the day, you knew exactly what you wanted that to look like,
Yeah.
and so you made sure that content was created in a uniform way, so it looked nice at the end.
Yeah.
So it's
And-
having that vision.
Yeah, I think a lot of like content creation, that term and like influencer kind of seem like the same thing, and that is such a negative connotation now. Like people are like, content creation, like they're almost embarrassed to admit that they want it, or they feel like they have to defend it. And it's crazy because I feel like videography wasn't customary or like something that really was on the list of things at one time.
Yeah.
So it's a
Yeah.
natural, again, evolution of like how we remember things. And like I said earlier, like you're taking pictures of everything in your day, even small mundane things. On your wedding day, it's only natural to want and need somebody to record all of those things. And like, so for me, in a typical 8-hour wedding, I'll deliver at least 500 clips from the day. So I'll go through it and they'll be like usable, like, but you don't need to have to be on social media or want to post on social media. So that's a huge thing too, is people are confused on, I don't really post on social media. Well, that's fine. If you want to look back on your memories and like, you know what I mean? Like a year from now, or when you're cuddling the pillow when they're not home, you can also like, you know, scroll those in. I also do like highlight reels and stuff like that, but again, the barrier to entry, I guess, is different because you're a cinematic camera, like cinematic video with a high-tech camera. Most content creators are only on like the iPhone.
Yeah.
And I would say if they offer more, then that's not necessarily content creation. That's like more. So really, they just have to use their phone, be like, you know, there's people that are just better with using their phone and recording and stuff, so that'll be a little different, but it's basically everybody's using the same type of thing. So
Same little thing. And then what's amazing about content creation is that it will take me weeks and weeks and weeks to put this cinematic video
Right,
together for you. It will take you 48 hours, 24 hours, airdrop the day of, right? So it is the perfect medium to remember your day just after it happened.
Yeah.
In fact, it would make less sense. We were talking about this earlier. It would make less sense for you to watch your cinematic wedding video first, then look at all the clips and BTS afterwards.
Yeah.
So it is literally perfect. You've had your wedding day. It was a blur. You barely remember what happened. And then you look back and go, wow, this was awesome.
Yeah.
2 days later or 24 hours later. Then you wait 4, 8, 12 weeks and your full video is produced. And that's the thing you're showing to family. You're getting everyone together for Christmas. You're getting together for your first anniversary and you're putting that on the TV and watching it, right? So very different goals, but at the end of the day, we're all here to capture the wedding story and what means most to you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's like a place for each, right? There is a world in which you choose, and there's a world in which maybe you have the whole thing as a whole package.
Exactly, and that's where, going back to what I was saying, right?
goals.
Everything beyond the certificate is a luxury.
Yeah.
So if this is valuable to you, right, you will prioritize it.
Right, exactly,
Exactly.
yeah.
So,
Guys, this has been really educational. Do you think
I
there's
was going
any?
to say it's so fun.
I know.
right? Yeah.
Is there any like major point that you guys think we missed that we need to go back to? Because I think for couples we've kind of captured a whole lot.
Yeah.
We've captured a good amount.
Yeah, we've captured a good amount. Absolutely. You could go really deep into like any of these things.
Yeah, you can absolutely. And feel free to, do some research on your own, right? I think the point of this video is that we want to give an overall kind of overview of the various things you should consider when it comes to booking your media team.
Absolutely.
And by media team, I mean photographer, videographer, and content creation.
Yeah.
But a lot of these things you can really deep dive into it. ChatGPT can help you with a lot of it. Googling various things, finding other people's experiences and opinions, right? See, should I go this or should I do this?
Yeah.
To round it out though, at the end of the day, have the conversation with your significant other. What is most important to you?
Absolutely.
Because that's what you're going to want to focus on when you plan your wedding.
Yeah.
And you're going to want to remember your wedding. How do you want that remembered? To give you a very sort of specific example, if you didn't have any kind of motion video captured, whether it's videography or content creation, during your general dancing, when dad is busting a move on the dance floor and looking amazing, it looks okay in photos. It looks like 90% of the way there. But video adds context.
Yeah.
And now you see him really going hard.
Having his moment.
Having his moment.
Yeah.
And that moment is priceless.
For sure.
And a photo just doesn't do it justice.
Yeah.
That was super fun.
That was really fun. That was really, I think, helpful for couples. For sure.
I think the goal, right, was that we want to just do a general overview of everything when it comes to booking your media team. You can absolutely go in and deep dive on very specifics. ChatGPT, Google, Facebook groups. You can really kind of find the nitty-gritty details beyond that point.
Yeah.
But now, hopefully we gave you guys a lot to think about.
Yeah. Just
things
thought
that
starters.
you might have not necessarily ever had to think about before.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Perfect. Well, so if you want the greatest wedding resource in Western New York, you should talk to Heather.
Yes, head over to upstateindiweddings.com or at Upstate Indie Weddings on Instagram. And we have a vendor directory. You can find incredible vendors there. We have resources, we have events, kind of everything to help you plan your special day.
Tips and tricks. Budget calculator.
We have all that kind of stuff on there. Spreadsheets. I love a good spreadsheet.
Out.
Yeah, nerd out on it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Lots of stuff.
If you have any questions about content creation specifically, hit up my girl Kim over there. Where can they find you?
Instagram is probably the best, so at Kim Spencer Content. I'm kind of on TikTok, but mostly Instagram. And my website is the same, kimspencercontent.com. And Billy for photo and video is at your website mostly.
My website mostly, www.bgf.photography. And also my Instagram at just bgf.photography. The goal with the Instagram is we're just really kind of playing off the behind the scenes. I want to show you how I work, right?
Yeah.
But if you want to actually see my work, go to the website. So then you're not like confined to a 9x16 little box to see my photos, right?
Absolutely.
Go do the deep dive on the website.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that can be said for a lot of things in life, actually.
Absolutely.
Right?
And don't forget, if you're a podcast person and you want to hear the unfiltered truth behind wedding planning, definitely check out Weddings Unfiltered because we talk about everything from photography to how to plan your wedding vision, interviewing local vendors, etc. So anywhere you get your podcast, check it out.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank
This
you.
was so fun.
So fun.
So fun.
So fun. All right.
Cool.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
As a little side note that I think we didn't really get to go into depth about during the main recording, but I think is very, very important when it comes to booking your photographer. It's mostly your photographer, although I think it does affect videography as well. One thing that's very important is when you choose your photographer, you will find on the internet photo studios or photography studios, and a lot of times the best way to determine the difference between a photo studio and what's known kind of like as a solopreneur, someone that owns their business and actually is the photographer, is that the photo studio will hire out what are called associate photographers. So they will hire other photographers to actually work your wedding day, and then they will do all the kind of editing and back end. So the actual person that shoots your wedding may not be the person you had the conversation with during the consultation call. There's pros and cons to it. A lot of times the photography studio options tend to be a little bit cheaper, but you end up with an option of, kind of being a little hit or miss on who your wedding photographer will be. Will you actually gel with them? This plays into our earlier conversation about how important their personality is, because you are spending the entire day with them. On the flip side of things, you have photographers like myself, and actually honestly most photographers in our area, who directly own their own business. In my case, it's just my initials, but a lot of times, it'll be so-and-so's photography. So they own the business. They are the actual photographer that will, one, meet with you during the consultation call, and two, actually physically be there to be your lead photographer. That builds that kind of instant trust, and you know exactly who will be there. Whereas with a wedding photography studio, it could be anybody, and unfortunately you don't really know until the day of. And that's just something we wanted to clarify. There is going to be a difference, and you will notice that as you look for your photographer. Thank you.